Today I'm going to talk about the feudal village I created and also the castle inside it called Stonehill Fort. Let's go through the process of making the castle and the village. Stonehill Fort is located on Brennan Hill in Worcestershire, a county in the West Midland regions of England, next to the Oakenfield Castle. Oakenfield is a friend. They trade goods with the Stonehill Fort and often fight the same battles together. There are lots of natural resources available on this area. A long river cuts through the grasslands not far from the hill, creating a large amount of water supply and an easy way to travel to this castle. Few cornlands, weeds, and trees have grown on the grasslands, which the serf farmers can take the crop and multiply it over the years. Some sheep and cows also have been wandering around looking for crops and grasses, so that also gives the farmer the opportunity to reproduce them to produce more livestock. Most castles were located on top of a hill so that the watchtower can see trouble from a long way. It is also difficult for invaders to come atop a hill since the knight armor is very heavy. A moat would also be very easy to build since there's a water supply nearby. This is the current map of where my castle is, and this is the old map, the Middle Ages map of where my castle is. The barbarians were every manner's enemies. As I've said before, castle towers were designed to give a wide view of the countryside around the fortress, so lookouts could spot oncoming attackers very easily. Once the watchtower people warn the knights, they'll come up and defend the outside village, including the serf houses and the farms. In return, serfs and peasants give knights goods and food in order for protection. Many castles were surrounded by man-made ditches, which were then filled with water and turned into moats. The water in the moat was truly disgusting. All the waste from castle toilets was tipped straight into the moat, which means that if you had a cut and you went into the water, you would die of infectious diseases. The moat also served many other useful purposes. One was that the attackers couldn't get close to the walls, and it also prevented the enemies from using battering rams or machines to break castle doors. It also helped the archers. If an enemy was standing right below an archer, it'd be really hard to shoot him, but the moat gives a fine range for shooting enemies. It also gives the archers the time to shoot them down. If they passed the moat, they would have to go through the portcullis, which is a lattice grill made out of hard steel in front of the gatehouse. Once the enemies break through, they would have to pass the gate entrance. It is the only entrance to the castle. There are many traps in the gate entrance, also called murder holes. Workers would pour hot boiling oil onto the knights through a secret hole on the ceiling, rusting their armor and later throwing down torches to burn them to death. If they passed that, they would have to go through the barbican, which is also another gate that has another portcullis that leads to the building where the monarch or the lord lives. There are also tons of murder holes. If the invaders pass that, it's not likely to happen. Another waves of knights, different from the ones that protect the serfs from the barracks, will come up and fight to protect their master. This defense strategy is what helps castle survive even till today. The medieval church played a far greater role in medieval England than the church does today. In medieval England, the church dominated everybody's life. All medieval people, including villagers, peasants, serfs, lords, ladies, and monarchs, believed that God, heaven, and hell all existed. From the very earliest of the ages, the people were taught that the only way they could get to heaven was that if the Roman Catholic Church led them. Everybody would have been terrified of hell, and people would have been told of the sheer horrors awaiting them from hell in the weekly services they attended in church. The control of the church had over the people was total. Peasants worked for free on church land. This proved difficult for peasants, as the time they spent working on church land could have been better spent working on their own plots of land, producing food for their families. They pay 10%. They paid 10% of what they earned in a year to the church. This tax was called tithes. Tithes could be paid in either money or in goods produced by peasant farmers. As peasants had little money, they almost always had to pay in seeds, harvested grains, animals, etc. This usually caused peasants a lot of hardship, as seeds, for example, would be needed to feed a family the following year. What the church got in tithes was kept in huge tithe barns. A lot of the stored grain would have been eaten by rats or poisoned by their urine. A failure to pay tithes, so the peasants were told by the church, would lead to their souls going to hell after they died. The lowest ranked people in the church are the parish priests. They're the most important of the church officials because they do the most work from day to day. They live in the parishes, provide sacraments for people, and send souls to heaven. The next level up are the bishops. The bishop's job is to control a certain group of parishes, which is known as the diocese, so they're like some of the parish priest's boss. The bishop can also perform 2 of 7 sacraments that parish priests could not. Above the bishop are the archbishops. They govern an area called the archdiocese. This area is a region that contains many dioceses, so archbishops can give orders to bishops. Next is the curia. Within the curia is a special group of people called the cardinals, but not all curias has the role of being the cardinals. The cardinal's job is to advise the pope. They also have the unique ability to vote for new popes when the time comes. The top of the church hierarchy is the pope. He is in charge of the entire domain of Catholicism. He has the most power in the manner and probably one of the most powerful persons in Europe. Most people in the Middle Ages wore woolen clothing, with undergarments made of linen. Brighter colors, better material, and longer jacket length were usually signs of greater wealth. The clothing of the aristocracy or the high classes people and wealthy merchants tended to be elaborate, changed according to dictates of fashion. Toward the end of the Middle Ages, men of the wealthy classes sported hose and a jacket, often with pleating or skirting, or tunic with a surcoat. Women wore flowing gowns and elaborate headwear, ranging from the headdresses shaped like hearts or butterflies to tall steep caps and Italian turbans. Most of the Holy Order wore long woolen habits in emulation of Roman clothing. One could tell the order by the color of the habit. Benedictines wore black, the Cistercians undyed wool or white. Saint Benedict stated that a monk's clothes should be plain but comfortable, and they were allowed to wear linen cuffs to keep their heads warm. The Blue Clare sisters, an order of Franciscan nuns, had to petition the Pope in order to be permitted to wear woolen socks. Around 500 CE, much of Western Europe was left without a strong centralized government due to the breakdown of the Roman Empire. With little organized resistance, Germanic or barbarian invaders raided Eastern European cities and monasteries. Because kings were often too weak to repel the invaders, many city dwellers moved into the countryside in hopes of greater safety. As a result of the invasions, no more Roman central government, a new social and political system known as feudalism developed. Feudalism provided little freedom of choice or social mobility, and greatly benefited the ruling classes who profited from the labor of peasants and serfs. In the feudal economy, the monarchy, usually a king, controlled huge tracts of land. He would give his support in a large piece of land called a fief to a powerful noble or lord in return for loyalty and military support. This meant that the lord was now a vassal of the king. The lords would then divide up that land into smaller fiefs to be given to knights in exchange for loyalty and military service. Finally, the knights would be left in direct control of the land and the peasants or serfs who lived there. Knights were expected to follow a code of behavior called chivalry code. A punishment would be given if a knight had broken one of the rules in the code. That's why knights were always loyal. As the populations of medieval towns and cities increases, hygienic conditions worsen, leading to many ranges of health problems. Medical knowledge was limited, and despite the efforts of medical practitioners and public and religious institutions to institute regulations, regulations, the medieval Europe did not have an acceptable healthcare system. Antibiotics weren't invented until 1800s, and it was almost impossible to cure diseases without them. There were many myths and superstitions about health and hygiene, as there still are today. People believe, for example, that disease was spread by bad odors. It was also assumed that disease of the body resulted from sins of the soul. Many people sought relief from their ills through meditation, prayers, pilgrimages, and other non medical methods. The body was viewed as part of the universe, a concept descended from the Greeks and Romans. Four humors, or body fluids, were directly related to the four elements. Fire equals yellow bile or color, water equals pale, earth equals black bile, and air equals blood. These four humors had to be balanced. Too much of one was thought to cause a change in personality. For example, too much black bile created melancholy. Melancholy. Medicine was often a risky business. Bloodletting was a popular method of restoring a patient's health and humors. Early surgery, often done by barbers without anesthesia, must have been excruciating. A day in the life. I woke up frowning for another day of hard effort of what was to come. I changed my clothes into wool and went out of my small house. My friend did the same. I stretched my arms out, yawning as I did. It was the same old thing. I couldn't leave the treacherous place, for I was a serf. My name was Alexander. I am a farmer. I grow crops and tend livestock. I also have to grind grains at the mill. It's not that easy as it looks. You have to work really hard just to get a bit of food. That's why I keep a secret. That's why I keep a secret mill inside my little bit. I could get as much flour as I dreamed, but if my lords found out, they would surely execute me. But they'll never find out because my hiding place, I'm not bragging, is exceptionally a good one. I sauntered to the cornfield, watered some plants, and went to the wheat field. I did the same thing over and over again until I was done with all the crops. I had to skip lunch because most servants don't have that much food to feast themselves. They also don't have that much time. I went to the cow pasture next. I was about to give them water when the castle bell rang. The barbarians have attacked! Cries of barbar echoed through the village. I rushed to my house. An army, our army, marched upon the village. They charged at the barbarians. The barbarians fell, one by one, until there was nothing left to fight. I thanked the knights and gave them some corn in return for protection. They didn't say anything and left quietly. When I went to get myself some bread and some cheese and ate supper. After that, I fell asleep on the table, tired as I could be. Now I'm gonna conclude with a thing link I created about this village. So, first the castle. Medieval castles were built to be as defensive as possible. Every element of their architecture was designed to make sure that the castle was as strong as it could be and could hold out against sieges which could somehow last months. This is the link where I got my information. Now the hill. Castles were built to be the highest point around, so if there was a hill, the castle went on top. This meant you could see trouble a long way off. This is where I got the information from, the hill slope. Next, the church. The medieval church played a far greater role in medieval England than the church does today. In medieval England, church dominated everybody's life. All the medieval people, whether they're village peasants or townspeople, believed that God, heaven, and hell existed. From the very earliest of the ages, the people were taught that the only way they could get to heaven was if that the Roman Catholic Church let them. Everybody would have been terrified of hell, and the people would have been told of sheer horrors awaiting for them in hell in weekly service they attended. This is the link I use for getting this information. Watermill. This is where peasants serve grind grains to make flour. River. This is where the people living in the manor gets their water. The river also keeps the wheel of the water mill spinning. This is where peasants and serve grow crops. Is the field. This is the barn. Serf's house. This is where the serfs or the unfree peasants live. This is the pasture. It's where peasants and serfs tend livestock. And this is the forest.